Mic check 1 2. Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
Testing, testing. Okay, well, we have about 2 minutes and we will start. It is 5:30, so we want to respect your time. So we will start that. Good evening, everybody. So we will start our meeting. Today is our, I believe it's our 8th meeting already. So thank you for being with us for all this time. We continue that. Um, this is the parts that we will cover tonight. Um, at the last meeting, and there has been several emails back and forth about the cost on the savings of the uh, closing schools. So I thought we will spend a little bit of time on that to know the actual cost or and savings. You know that the savings is only the administration of the school. You know that like the principal, the school secretary, and the custodian staff, and the utilities. You know that's not. So it's about for the elementary school. It's about $1 million from that. So there was like we are assuming that we will keep our students because we will make a lot of other schools better than what we have. We would offer better programs to our students. Um, so we talk about this, and we, we have this every meeting. Oh, I need to do that. It's not working. Oh, no, that didn't work out. Okay. Ah, okay. So it's our A meeting. So by the time we finish this meeting, we will finish most of the data analysis that we need, and then we will go into the next step. Several of the questions from last meeting is when will we engage the community, and that will be on the next phase. So I know we still have a lot of data. We had to convert it and put it in a format that is digestible for all of us to review. The web page is already there. So as always, we will answer the questions from last time. Okay. So I'm gonna read the questions and the answers because we realize there's more people watching this meeting besides us. So that way we will do that. So one of the questions is, please provide more data on transfer requests. How many are denied? Why are employees who work at a specific site not able to enroll, transfer the students to the school they work at? You know ahead of time that you can accept more requests, then you can plan for teachers, staff ahead of time. All of these questions is yes, the way that you ask the questions. So this is our answer for this. So schools approve as many intra-district requests as possible. There are times when a school must deny a request if there is no room for a student at a specific grade level. For example, if there are two fourth-grade classes, each of 34 students per class. If intra-district requests come for a fourth-grade student, then the eastern request will be denied due to lack of space for the student. So we have part of our contract agreement, just the maximum students that we could have per class. That's one area. Okay. Question number two are special ed students included in the student enrollment data that was presented last time. The answer is yes. That was just all the students. I don't know. That's okay. Um, we had a little hard time to understand this question, so we did not answer the question. Please let us know. We will. So we think we understood it, but it's the equity program for English learners. You know that was like was a debate on A, B, and C. So I don't know. Did we understood this question? I don't know. We or somebody could explain that to us. Is that we don't know who threw this question, but that was a question in the parking lot. So we could provide that data for our EL classes and your students. So that's what we are. Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. Kidding. There is a lot of questions. Hearing how families should be our driver, and this committee having to make recommendations on what schools to close, realigning school boundaries, community feedback input is important. So pretty much it's like at what point in time are you gonna ask, you're gonna do the survey for the families, and it is coming. This question was actually done 3 times. Was asked to I put it into so in a different format but similar question. So yes, we need to do a survey. That's part of the phase two, and we need to do some scenarios designed so we can ask the families, and then we will do the community service and outreach. You will be the most knowledgeable that, and we will bring the survey to these committees before we share that. So the goal of this phase is to gather community feedback necessary to refine scenarios and help inform the final recommendations being developed for the Board of Trustees. Okay. Proposition 28. Thank you for this question. Based on these questions, we develop infographic about what Proposition 28 is, how much allocation is for each school, how we're going to spend those funds, and it is posted at each school webpage, and it's also included here. I have another. Can you bring another one? I have another one. No, it's not working. I have another one. You want to try another one? I have another one. This one. It's the same time though. This one. Mine has better. This is a lot. So this question is, you are current reading intervention teachers. You know, how do you plan to use concentration funds to serve students? So this is, of course, we believe in reading and continue. So the decision to transition away from traditional pull-out reading intervention position was not a retreat from literacy. Rather, it was a strategic shift toward more sustainable, proactive system support. Our goal is to move from the model that reacts to reading failure to one that prevented in first place, to ensure concentration funds, specifically designated for English learners, low-income students, and foster youth, are maximized for the students' success. Our plan focuses on three core pillars: strengthening three-tier core instructions. This is what we do in the science on reading, embedded instruction coaching, and MTSS. You know, instead of waiting for the students to fall behind and pull it in out of classes, we are investing for concentration funds to ensure that every classroom teacher is fully equipped to deliver high quality evidence reading instruction. So that's kind of where an example of that. We're providing the leaders training. So you can read that. Okay. So that next question is, can we get a chart based on assistant staffing, how to show how many cohorts can be served at each site? We might not have qualified staff to offer 2 bilingual classes in all grades. The staff is allocated based on the student enrollment. We can find qualified staff. And question number 8 was answered in number 4. So this question is like, the following question is kind of like some kind of like a frustration for this committee is like, when are we going to do the focus on on boosting enrollment? You know, this is one of the decisions for this committee to do that. We could do that when we do the optimum program model. Question number 10, can the district move into a baking school size? And the answer is yes, it could be considered. You know, that is one, could be one of the considerations. Can we make it 6-12 schools international IB programs? Yes, it can be considered. You know, there's another question is, at the last meeting it was say our administration budget percentage was less than average. Where do we consider those, and can we do an independent company's transparency? So the answer is yes. It's actually started down by Central Unified School District, where they select all of these comparable districts based like on the size and the enrollment. And this is from 2025, 24. And this is that's why we say that. So that's and but the school administration under SACS account code is defined as the central administration and the school administration. That's defined. So the school administration is function 2700, and general administration that will be like our central office is the all the school districts in California. We had to follow the same accounting rules, and that's how we do the coding. So this is just questions about like the five fingers how they was used. I think it was explained at the first meeting. Or we could review that. The five fingers. Yeah. Who is the gatekeeper here? There was I wanna make I made the question a little short. It was kind of like a frustration, like who is leading? Like it need to be like a who is the gatekeeper. So I understood like it isn't a way to interpret the question or to bring us back to the main topic. So I put Mr. Salazar, Joe Salazar, and we say that from the beginning. And there was another one about we need to consider that all things are not equal. What falls into the category of supermajority or vote to be required. So I think as we got on, we made the decisions. There's something that the committee needs to decide. And then we're almost there. 16 is that was like really like this should be like a task force. The question should be where is the strategy to accomplish that task force. So from the very beginning, we say that this is a recommendation, for this committee, and we thought a lot about the name. We might not get the SSA. The name might not be the best name, but we discussed several names and we went by that. But this is not a task force. This is a recommendation for the board. That it's like our decision is not final. The board has to make the final decision. And the last question. We have been working on this. That is coming very soon. Where is the my school locator? So that's what it says. So at this point in time, that's all the questions. Yeah.
I want to respond to number 14 because that's a fair question. And in the traditional sense, I'm not acting as a facilitator. Okay. And when I was invited to participate in this, I made it clear that I was not an expert in any of this. I was hesitant. So I'm really more of a keep this thing going in a positive direction. Peacekeeper was. Anyway, so it's a fair question, and we've been moving along with the agendas, and everyone's participating to their level. We've got a couple of. So well, this group anyway, and I don't know if everyone's feeling, they're getting the answers they want, the information they want, and moving in the right direction, but I'm not hearing a lot of dissension in the group. So facilitator typically is up in front doing what these other gentlemen and ladies and women have done, and I'm just sitting here some of these people. So it hasn't been that I haven't felt that I've needed much, but I'm still coming. But I feel soon it's going to get hairier, and a lot of hard questions, hard issues, and there may be a time I'm more involved. But I'm just, like in court, things are going well, I'm fine. I let the attorneys run it, and you folks are all running this thing. So, but it's a fair question. I was wondering the same things. Like, facilitator, I'm not facilitator. So, I hear that. So anyway, wanted to give him my 2 cents on that.
The next one is going to go to the presentation. So the presentation regarding the special ed.
because usually I don't have to have a, oh. Hi guys, Mark Herbst, Deputy Superintendent Pajaro, Valley Unified. Wonderful to be here. I appreciate the time. At least I got to meet some of you guys coming in. Look forward to meeting all of you. I want to say it takes a village anytime you hear me speak, and I am absolutely pleased to be joined by Miss Peggy Pugh, our Director of Student Services, who will be chiming in and assisting me, and also the brand new Megan Hunt, the Executive Director of Special Services within Pajaro Valley Unified's CELPA. So it's important today to know we're going to kind of shift lenses, but it's not going in a different direction. It's gathering more information. So a decision isn't going to be made tonight, but from my understanding, there's been a lot of conversations regarding enrollment facilities and some of the constraints there. Today, we're going to take a deeper dive into the programmatic end of the work that we're doing. So with that, and I'm going to walk away from my mic, if I could be so kind or anybody. You'll notice my transition, but I'm going to lose this because I'm going to keep wanting to walk around. You guys know me. Thank you, sir. Please, the next slide, Mike. Today, we're going to really take a deeper dive into the LCAP and the outcomes there. Because on the programmatic side of it, not only from an LCAP perspective do we get the parent voice and the community voice into what we do, but it also is designed to lead to the outcomes we want. So we're going to share some relevant data there. We're also going to look, obviously, at our student demographics and really focus on the Youth Truth Survey, which is a survey that's administered to our staff, to our families, and to our students to look at some data trends there. And then we're going to take a deeper dive into probably one of our most at-promise populations. And I know, oh, goodness gracious. I'm going to feel locked in, Gerardo. This is going to be awkward. Sorry, guys. Oh, I can walk around the middle. I just can't leave. Yeah, I need like a tape zone. Make sure we get my good side if there is such a thing. Then we're going to look at one of our most at-promise populations. And the reason why we focus on some of our at-promise populations is really, and I think there's a slide on it, but I'm going to hit it now. When we look at some of the work that's being done in here now, it's important to not look at those populations as an afterthought to the work. It's actually a consideration as we use to drive the decisions that will be made or the recommendations that will come out of this committee. So with that, oh my goodness, thank you. As I talked about before, we're really going to do a deeper dive into the programmatic piece of it. With the LCAP, again, we really are looking at what our students are achieving, and we're going to start there. I'm then going to rely a little bit on Peggy on the Youth Truth Survey, because that really shows perceptions. And I do want to share, as we go through the data slides when we get there, this is in no way, shape, or form data and accountability in the state is somewhat complicated to understand. I'll do my best to explain it. But I would say it's not to label or to label a certain school in any way, shape, or form. Every time you have a relative strength and weakness, and I've seen many, many data sources to where there's variety, but there's definitely a trend, I would say, in Pajaro Valley. We'll touch on that. But it's also going to show how some of our student groups have done. So that's going to be a big piece of it. But I would say, honestly, again, for the relevance of the SSA and what we're doing here tonight, the program conditions really do assist in being a driving force rather than just looking at it from just the facilities, the enrollment, and those pieces at the end. Next slide, please. So, with that, as I said before, our LCAP really looks at our student outcomes. The SSA decisions need to be grounded not only in the realities that we face, but also the student needs that we have. And with that, we got to understand what it is that we're looking at as we consider future considerations. And that's where we really tie back into the special education piece and one of our more as-promised populations. So, prior to this, I know that you guys did a lot of work on the facilities end. This is driving it again and taking on more of the programmatic lens and our achievement ends, which actually nicely complements the fiscal reality that we're in. And I think that it's going to be evident when we get there in terms of where we're at and probably the work that still needs to be done long term. All right, so just looking at our student demographics as a whole. So you're going to see the total amount of students that we serve here in Pajaro Valley. With that, you're going to be the students that basically the percentage of students that are deemed socioeconomically disadvantaged, our current population of English language learners, former English language learners that have been reclassified, the total percentage of our students with disabilities. We're currently at 17% of the Pajaro Valley student population. The percentage of students that we have that are unhoused or in transitional living situations. migrant, and our foster youth. So that's basically our kids by the numbers. And that, I believe, was the number that was taken from last year at probably the census time, I would assume.
Sorry, can you just clarify one
Yeah.
number there?
Yeah.
Where you said current or former English learners.
Mhm.
So would that presume that 64 minus 38 is the former English learners?
Yeah, you know what, and honestly, I thought that was our reclassification. Somebody wants to have a comment between the two? Gotcha.
So it includes, the 64% includes the 37.9.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay,
that's right,
thank
slide. Thank you, appreciate that. So our district goals, and I know that there's been some discussion at the last board meeting about the revision to those goals, but the district goals that we operate around really are community driven. And they're adopted by the board, but they really focus on a couple key tenets in there. Clearly, there's gonna be the academic excellence piece of that. Professional learning really drives, professional learning and our desire to continue to grow in our constant quest to be the best we can be affects all people within the organization, whether that be classified staff, certificated staff, administration. Professional learning is essential as we continue to move forward and become the best we can be for our students. Climate, culture, and community equity is a driving force within Pajaro Valley Unified. Also, the safety and belonging our students feel is something that I know in the past and still is to this day a huge priority within this district. Fiscal responsibility, the transparent spending. There's only limited resources. We need to make sure that we're transparent in that process, but also responsible and making sure that we devote the resources to the areas that we're targeting in terms of our academic, social, emotional, and overall well-being goals. Finally, you have the human resources end of it. Human resources really drives hiring the best and brightest that we can in Pajaro Valley and how we go about nurturing those staff to make sure that they're as successful as they can be while they're in this district. All right, so I believe, and in maybe in previous meetings, if not, you are maybe familiar with the data dashboard. The educators in here are. So basically, it ranks you not only onto a degree an overall percentage, but when you look at the data dashboard, it's also recognizing growth. So it's a growth measurement as well as an overall proficiency level. We clearly want all of our students to be at or above grade level when it comes to their academics. That isn't always the case. So what's nice about the accountability measure is if we basically make accelerated growth, the color that we make actually shows that growth despite the fact that we may not be has as high a percentage as, say, another school in neighboring Santa Cruz County or Monterey County. So it measures it two different ways. So looking at where we're at, and again, I in no way, shape, or form want to label that this is a problem, but I would tell you, historically, we have seen, which isn't uncommon, but inconsistent growth. Very proud of actually a number of the measures, even some of the ones in the red actually still show growth. But what we're seeing here is probably not the amount of growth that I think everybody potentially in this room would want, but we're seeing growth, we're proud of that. With that being said, I would be remiss if we didn't say that we don't have work to do. If the goal is continue to get higher and higher percentage of our students achieving at grade level, et cetera, that is a work in progress, and there's clearly ongoing work that should be done to support that. So what I want to point out here, and when you see where we're labeled green, it's kind of like the highlights. We once again really made some movement on our English language progress. Our long-term EL showed strong progress by basically decreasing the amount of long-term English language learners we have in this district, which is a very big positive. Again, our graduation rate, a nice almost a little bit less than 2% growth, but moving from 90.6 to 92.3. And then our college and career preparedness indicator. That is the a statewide metric that really determines that the students that graduate from Pajaro are college and career ready. There's a lot of measurements there, and I don't want to bore you with it, but stuff like A to G can be a college and career indicator on meeting it. The completion of a CTE college career technical education pathway. All those things make up that CTE marker. So we moved up 5%. Yellow just means we could have made more growth. We stayed, I mean, it was still a nice increase, but yellow means we didn't make the expected growth to get up to the next performance band. Still proud of the 5%. And again, just to put it in perspective on this other side, just so you guys have a full understanding, our ELA and math were improvements. So when you're measuring the distance from standard, standard is performing at grade level. So if we have students that are performing 71.7 below standard, below grade level, you want to reduce that number to as close as you can to 0, and actually have kids that are at or above, in which case that would be a good thing. One thing that has remained consistent, and I don't have the numbers yet for this year, I understand improvement, but chronic absenteeism has been a focal area in Pajaro. I know this last year and the year previous. So that number based on our last year's chronic absenteeism basically remained the same. And chronic absenteeism, we familiar with that term? Basically, yeah, 10%, okay, shaking the heads, I could do a quick explanation. No one would rather hear me not, got it 100%. Excellent. So, I know I touched on it briefly, and I wouldn't mind us going back to the slide so that they can see the data. But when you see the data and where our kids are at, and I'd like you guys in this particular case to possibly, sorry if I'm walking out away from my designated area, what resonates with you when I share that data and why? Is there a pattern that you see that in your mind or from your perspective or lens deserves closer attention? Closer attention either based on the data, or maybe it's an intuition on what you believe is something that exists in Pajaro Valley. And then what question would drive that carrying forward? And so to me, what I'd like to do, and I don't know if we have an even or odd number, if you don't mind pairing up with the person next to you, if we don't have an even number, maybe one group go to three. But I'd like this group to be able to discuss that, and then we'll have a brief share out. Just, oh, there we go. One more minute, then we'll have a brief share out. All right, guys, thanks. Let's bring it back. Anybody willing to share out kind of what their partner talked about? Looking at 3 or 4 individuals. No pressure, but I would love dialogue. Feels awkward. No, thank you so much.
I was sharing that me being a teacher, the ELA curriculum, the kids have zero connection to it. There's, I teach it, we do the Spanish version, but still like zero connections. The stories are totally not, they don't look like the students. And I feel like that's a big part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. I know I have brave individuals in here. No pressure, no pressure.
I'll jump in for you.
Please, thanks.
So on the left side, first off, everything here is important, right? On the left side, if we got to sum it in one way, it's can't take your foot off the gas pedal, right? Just got to go. In general, for all of these, and particularly the first 2 in red, we don't know how significant those differences are or if they indicate a trend over time. So great that it's 68.7 instead of 71.7, but I don't know if that's meaningful. I don't know what the error rate is or anything else. Last point, chronic absenteeism, of course, is just crazy out of control at 25%.
Yeah, it's high numbers. I would be surprised when you look at the chronic rate. Coming out of the pandemic was rough, especially when there was quarantines. Then a lot of districts, I believe Pajaro too, experienced a really significant decline. But then it's funny, the challenge has been for the last 2 years, it has been consistent. That isn't necessarily unique, but that number is incredibly high. Incredibly high when you look at the research that supports why students need to be in school. Last one, if not, I will, go for it.
We talked about all of it. And I, like, when I see these numbers as a teacher, I see the faces in my classroom that make up a portion of these demographics. And I was in charge of the 5th grade ELD class with 26 students, and 3 of those did reclassify, but it was hard. It was Connect 5 curriculum. It was good. So I say keep going with that. And we also talked about the chronic absenteeism, and Maciel, her and I both, we see it on a first-hand basis, her being in the office, and then myself, just not having the kids in class. And I've had parent conferences. We don't know what to do. The only thing that that has really kind of worked with me for the summer school classes, I had 28 students. I had finished off with 17, which is actually pretty high. And day 1, I was like, hey, if you guys get perfect attendance, you're gonna get these 3 rewards at the end of the week. If you miss a day, you'll get 2 out of the 3 you get to choose. And that was a high enough. So it was the rewards. If we can connect the rewards more academically, that's our challenge. And I'm also excited to learn the paradigm, the new math program. I'm really excited to see that, because I know just like we have a science of reading and it makes sense, math is pretty straightforward, and there are math facts all over the place that the kids, they need a more clear instruction, and I'm excited for that. So, and there was more, but yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody who
Mama,
shared it. Oh,
could you define, because when I was around, there was a couple of questions like what is chronic absenteeism?
Yeah.
Just define it, because I know some of us know educators, but there's quite a few different backgrounds. So
it actually is a moving target throughout the year, but I'm just going to give you for the entire school year. Chronic absenteeism defined as missing 10% or more of the school year, and where it varies is it depends on where you're at in the school year. So obviously 10% of 180 would mean I missed 18 days in a school year or more to be chronically absent. the moving target is, and in a way, you can kind of get yourself beyond that if you hit 18 too soon. But you could be chronically absent early in the semester if you have 90, and we're at 90 days, and you have missed 10% of 90 is 9. So if I'm at 10 and I'm at 90, in order to get myself out of that trajectory, I would need to start attending to avoid getting 18 at 180, if that makes sense. Good explanation?
Yeah, how about like they're absent more than 30 minutes? Is that considered?
Oh, getting into the nuance, yeah, it's,
So it's more than just, I think you are considered present for ADA, but not for, that could count as that.
correct. All right, any final thoughts on that? Moving on? And then we gotta get caught up. All right, so that was just kind of a regurgitation, but I do want to point out this. One of the things that we need to keep our eyes on, and again, I don't want to say that this is a Pajaro thing, this is in no way, shape, or form to rank it, this isn't inconsistent, but I will tell you, it is a challenge in many places, including Pajaro. So we're going to see some academic performance scores when we look at it. I would tell you typically on any holistic number, and it's not, I'm going to say typically, but definitely in Pajaro, the groups that we need to be paying attention to are typically some of our more at-promise student groups. So you're going to start seeing students with disabilities that are in the red on academic achievement, absenteeism, college and career. You're going to see our English language learners that should, and it might not be up there, guys, but you're going to see that really a district isn't charged with just an overall rate. I think it's great, and what am I doing wrong? But okay, thank you. Oh, I wish I did not have this microphone. That's okay. The student groups have to continue to be a focus. Because if we're serious about every student, and all of them meeting our vision statement, it isn't just the conglomerate of all. We need to put the time, effort, and resources into the students that historically struggle in a school setting. And I think that's the big piece, and that will be part of the stuff that Megan and I kind of tag team the presentation when we get to our SWDs and their performance. So here, again, and I want to point this out for the SSA, chronic absenteeism, and I think you got to the point. Chronic absenteeism is driven by many factors. I could be chronically absent because of the situation I'm living in at my home environment. I could be chronically absent because of a transportation barrier. I could be chronically absent because I have anxiety and I fear coming to school. So many things can play into chronic absenteeism, and it's difficult to get the hypothesis. You almost have to have individual conversations to try to break down the barrier. And actually that's on top of incentives, that's where the research goes in terms of how you try to reduce your chronic absenteeism numbers. Sorry, I'm getting up on my tangent, I shouldn't. Okay, next slide. All right, so again, looking at the student subgroups, and our student groups. When we look at the dashboard and we're looking at red, and red defines the most intense focus, at least from what we did last year, you're gonna see exactly what I talked about. We have a disproportionate representation of African American students and their suspension rate when you compare them to the other student groups in Pajaro. You have English language learners in the area of science. You have our Hispanic students in the areas of chronic absenteeism. Our students that are living in transitional situations in ELA and math. Our long-term English learners in science. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged in English language arts and chronic absenteeism. And then our students with disabilities, chronic absenteeism, and college and career readiness. And the purpose of this slide is really when you look at, and we look long-term about what will come out of this committee, you really want to be keeping in mind that we have to also look at it by the students we serve, not necessarily just the facilities they're in, the enrollment, et cetera. Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Just to highlight the African American suspension rate, how much of that is driven by the low percentage numbers in the rate? So, I mean, this is all point in time data. This is all about, if you have 1% of the population, that means 5 people, and one of them gets suspended, that's gonna give you 25%, or 20%, right? So like, when we look at these numbers, I think it's important to understand those contexts, and that you guys are already vetting that data set, or at least calling those ones out.
Yeah, I never want to diminish it, but to your point, I'm going to actually agree with you here in a second. I never want to diminish it because if you look historically at our student groups, discipline based on race, ethnicity has been a problem historically, okay? Actually, it's funny, when I was looking at our data, that wasn't, actually with the exception of the African Americans, we actually have very proportional suspension rates in Pajaro Valley. African American, again, not to diminish it, because I do want to say that the challenge out there historically has been the use of suspension with our Black African American kids. But to your point, in this district, it is a relatively small group of students, therefore you can get big swings year to year. And anytime you see a lower number of students, the swings can be large because of the size of the student population, to your point.
Well, it's also looking at the other context of the size of the other proportionate to the size of, so it's also about how you look at the data that's critically important. So when I would look at that, I'd be like, okay, well, let's look at the, you know, I think we looked at 82% socioeconomically, component versus suspension rates versus neglect complaints versus all those other things that are correlated, right?
Yeah, and to your point, really what you're looking at even with the swing or going deeper into the data is you tend to look more for trends. Because yeah, if I look back and it was 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, yes, that still exists, but we should be able to see a trend going back or forth either way with the swing that we talked about, but I agree with you. Okay, next slide. All right, so here, and again, I want to point out, this is in no way, shape, or form a desire to rank our schools, critique our schools. Every school has factors at play. And honestly, schools can vary from year to year just based on their performance programs. A lot of things can come into play that can change the data. But if you look at it, the point here is, I just want to demonstrate some schools without, it's not with a desire to label. You can have specific needs in multiple areas. And that illustrates just a handful of schools that actually, it's not just one or two areas we're trying to remedy, it's multiple areas. And with that comes more increased focus, but it also comes a desire of potentially resources and, again, further data analysis on the why behind those numbers. Yeah. All right, so we already have that are targeted to identify our students' needs on the academic support. We have literally accelerations, we have mathematics interventions, we have progress monitoring, we have one great expanded learning after school program that really ties in nicely with the academics. There's a lot of great things that are in place within Pajaro Valley. We've got multilingual learners, and we obviously have the work that's being done with our English language learners at our school sites at all levels, including a state seal of biliteracy that is achievable upon graduation from high school. We really are dipping in, and we have the supports, and again, by having it, I would say it's always still a work in progress on what we can do. But here, when you look at the wellness piece and the school climate piece, MTSS, which is a desire to provide good, strong tier 1 across the board, both behaviorally, social, emotionally, and academically, but then having supports and tiers for tier 2 and tier 3 kids to need it to keep them or move them back into tier 1. That exists at the academic end as well. Dual enrollment expansion, I believe that is in the works this year, which is dual enrollment would be me taking college level courses and getting credits for those college level courses, usually a collaboration and agreement with our JC. It can be a CSU as well. And then the college and career opportunities. We do offer a pretty robust CTE program within Pajaro Valley. So again, some positive things that really, in my mind, intrigue our students and hopefully get them to want to pursue areas of interest as well as potentially going to college and hopefully going to college. Oh, and then college and career ready, I think I talked about it, the expanded CTE. A to G is a goal. It is A to G and the completion thereof. And again, where you stand depends on where you said. A to G is making sure that we don't close doors to students. So you may say, well, not every student is going to go to a four-year college, and I agree with you. I didn't go to a four-year college. But it's a matter of not going and closing a door on a child, because when you graduate A to G, regardless of what it is that you choose to do, you graduate with the ability technically to get into a CSU or potentially a UC. So the A to G battle cry is one that exists in many districts, including Pajaro Valley. All right, let's get, question.
It's not really a question. So I'm looking at the data, and the dashboard tells us what student scenarios need to improve, and just different scenarios that talk about like operational conditions and how we need to look at that as a whole. If the scenario weakens attendance, support, and like intervention capacity, service continuity, we really need to understand that as a whole, and the impacts of those like decisions that we're going to be forced to recommend before moving forward. One of the really biggest things that I've been looking at is that these numbers aren't very different from last year and the year before. That being said, has the district actually looked at a deep analysis in how classified workforce and teaching workforce impacts those trends that are happening? Because as we've cut the workforce substantially over the last 2 years, that data matters. And so I really want us to understand that when supports and staffing at school sites get cut, while district leadership positions at the district office grow, it not only hurts optics, but it hurts our students at the school sites.
Not to combat it at all, I understand the perspective, I do. I would say, and I'll just give you an example of something to where, I think during difficult fiscal times, it's always a challenge. Because I would argue that every single person in this room, including community members, are valuable to our student success. So anytime one leaves, it's a challenge. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I would say, and I'll just use a point, this isn't a bargain, but just saying it in general. In the past, there are many districts that have focused on intervention after the fact. And when they've invested in what we're doing initially, the interactions, let's even say classified paraprofessional training, okay? You invest on that front end, you would be surprised that I would say we could be equally as effective through any budget cut because we've got well-trained staff. Ditto on the reading intervention piece of it. We could spend a lot of money on trying to correct something that if we took a proactive approach, actually would reduce the need for the intervention in the first place. Not completely. We're always going to have students that need intervention. Always, 100%. But thank you. I appreciate you sharing. Okay, I want to get into the Youth Truth, and I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Peggy Pugh. Youth Truth is a survey. I believe many of you guys have taken it. I think educators that are familiar with it. But it really is, and Peggy will kind of get into kind of the themes of what it's doing, but it's really a deep dive into what our students, our parents, and our staff feel about the conditions at their particular school site. Again, if you haven't heard me the 6 times I've said it, we'll go one more. You're going to see some data, and this is in no way, shape, or form a desire to share, I think this is better, I think this is whatever. I have seen students that have had schools that have had survey data that has turned that survey data around in a year. I've seen there's many factors that can influence our students' perceptions, our parents' perceptions, and our staff perceptions at their schools. So with that, I will turn it over to the wonderful Director of Student Services, Peggy Pugh.
Thank you. Alrighty, so if you've been in PVUSD for some time, you have had the opportunity to participate in the Youth Truth Survey. It's a yearly moment in time, so it represents February of 2026. We have staff, students, and families who respond to the survey. So this is just an infographic showing the total response rate, how many of those are students, families, staff, and the response rates related. This slide is all of those responses together. So I went back and forth. Should we leave this one in? Because it's not from each perspective. It's actually all told together. When we look at the responses from students, we'll see different rates. When we look at the students from staff, we see different rates, and from families. But this is all rolled up together. At the far right, I have to turn myself around. At the far right is the highest rating, family relationships, student engagement, and then down towards the bottom part, student culture. So again, this is everybody's response all together. So this site level view is not about a ranking. This is feedback for schools so that the school leaders, the school staff can help make better informed decisions. Okay, we think that we're knocking it out of the park with how our families feel about our school, but then what we heard back wasn't as strong as we thought it might be. Well, then let's dig into that. And part of Youth Truth, what's really great is there's responses that are just, you're checking off the boxes, but then there's also an opportunity to give some feedback. And we use that feedback. So our school sites in their leadership teams, the instructional leadership teams, for example, in their school site councils, they will look at their individual site response rates to see, okay, what are we doing really well? How can we continue that? Because I think that was, to your point, Steve, was like, don't take your foot off the gas on the things that are working great. But then also, how do we lean into the things that we can improve upon? And maybe we look at what we're doing well, and can we mirror that in those other areas where we need to grow? Thank you. So this is the overall overall pattern for the parent responses. Relationships are a strong signal, and they were consistently high. The response rates for sites that had a strong response rate, it gave us a look into how parents were feeling. Lots of those had over 75% of a positive rating. And then for secondary sites, we still need to do more digging in. How can we grow those relationships between our families at our secondary sites? So as a longtime secondary educator myself, having those meetings with families, they say, well, I'm trying to give my kids some space. Good idea. We want to grow their autonomy, but we also want to make sure that our children know that we still care about them and their education. So we got to do both, right? We can't walk so far back in our family engagement at the middle and high school level, but we still need to balance that with autonomy for our young people. So this slide itself is when they had a high number of responses and what their highest rated items were. So relationships, communication, safety, that's what those safety, that's what is referring to. So taking a look down here, this key interpretation, Ohlone, high, WCSA, clearest, strong, and balanced profiles, Radcliffe, Mar Vista, Landmark, Rolling Hills, Rio, strong family confidence, Diamond Tech, high overall engagement, also something to watch there. So these are kind of snapshots, and I think there may have been a question that came, so we'll go through this tonight. We also have done longer presentations on this at board meetings in the spring, so we can also put that back out as well. All right. Sites that might need some closer attention or review. As we're thinking through planning, in general, our comprehensive high schools are material lower on parent confidence. Scenarios that touch these feeder patterns need parent communication and safety access plans. So always paying attention to what does the data tell us? How can we use that to help us grow? And so it's not these aren't terrible results. These are just areas that we need to start looking into. So the scenario testing question. Will the option preserve the conditions parents already trust and strengthen the conditions where parent confidence is lower? So one of multiple things we'll be using as the SSA is our parent and staff and student responses to Youth Truth. But it's not the only thing. This is meeting, was it 7 or 8? 7, 8? Not 6, 7.
It's a schedule A, but
7 and 8. There you go.
we missed 7 and 8 because we missed one.
Okay, so this combo platter. So as we are moving through these meetings, you're taking in a lot of information. This is some of the information that we have to consider, right? We cannot only consider financial aspects. We cannot only consider facilities aspects. So this is one of those multiple factors. Alrighty. Okay, so I can go back to some slides if we want to rest there for a moment, but what I'd like you to do is turning to that partnership or triad and thinking it through the parent voice as we're considering these scenarios that we'll eventually be making some decisions around. What do we want to make sure we highlight and we protect? Where do some of these things align? And what are some of the things that we're going to want to use as part of our decision making? What are some things we want to bring into consideration? All right, so let's take 3 minutes turning to elbow partner or in triad. So either partners or groups of three. Fancy language for groups of three in your partners or triads. Have some discussion and then we will share out. Alrighty. Thank you so much. So, Sylvester, go ahead and go to, okay. So, what are some of the things that we want to make sure that we are going to, like pay attention to coming out of the parent responses? What do we want to make sure? Because we don't ever want to, if we've got some positive responses, we want to continue those and work on adjusting ones that are lower. So what are some of the things that we want to make sure that we really highlight? Ray,
Well-
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I think the one thing that we talked about, just like forward thinking, right, is in this opportunity of the incoming school from whatever gets closed, that you have a comparison of these questions, and in situations where, you know, the incoming is lower than the parent average score, you focus in on those topics and make sure you have a concerted effort, right, around those things. But before you get there, I don't want to keep picking on the data, but there's another example where the data scores only tell you so much if you're basing it on an aggregate and monolithic view of data, right?
Sure.
When you're looking, like, for instance, we looked at Ohlone had the highest score, you also look at the parent population that is attending those schools, they're also less likely to complain to you, just from an aggregate data point from migrant and monolingual speaking Spanish. They're gonna tell you everything's fine. That's just, and so it's like self-fulfilling prophecy.
Sure.
And so that data is only good if you're looking at it on face value. But I really ask that we look deeper and understand to have a level of like variable testing that you would do in survey data to make sure that you're accounting for that and then getting a true measure. So you're actually comparing apples to apples.
Understood. Thank you. Yeah, Amads.
I think we echo a lot of what you said. I would also say it's a little unclear where in the process this becomes really valuable, except for towards the end where you are looking at that consolidation and saying, okay, what do we want to make sure we're bringing, and maybe let's not, if we are combining two that share a similar weakness, that should be a red flag, and what are we doing there? Earlier in the process, I guess the question would be, or the clarification that would be helpful is, as you're designing a optimal program model, I'm not sure how this data necessarily would influence that.
So, I mean, I think that those are all good questions, including, just as we will consider as a body, all of the information we know about each of the schools, this is one of the pieces of information. There's a lot to it that we know about those schools. Coming, I think it's next week, Gerardo, or not next week, our next meeting, I think we're looking at student demographics, and we're looking at, it's either the next meeting or the one after, but that is one of those things we'll also have to consider. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, last comment.
I value both of what they said because we had very similar conversations. However, going back to the original point that we're supposed to be presenting and speaking to, one of the really big things that stood out to us is that parents are actually speaking to their children feeling safe. Their child's experience at the school site, their child and their voices being heard. One of the things that I can say, just because I am here to advocate for classified and staff, right? When the workforce gets cut, then those supports and those phone calls and those emails and those, right? They go unheard, and it goes unheard for longer. Teachers get stressed because they don't have time to go to the bathroom. Staff don't have time to go to the bathroom. So when this is happening and we're not able to prioritize that genuine personable connection with our students and our families and those parents that love and take care of those kids and answer that survey, then that's where the disconnect happens, right? So for me, it is really looking at that data that came in, because we're only looking at the data that actually came in, right? The number one thing is that parents felt that their child was safe, heard, seen, and they were getting the supports that they needed in their school that they attended. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I may, I want to add to that communication. We talked a
Sylvester,
lot
go
about
ahead.
protecting communication. Many of our parents are not tech savvy, and they want a phone call, or they want something in writing. So we need to be sensitive to the needs of each school site and what the parents need.
Thank you. Sylvester, you want to go ahead go to the next slide, and I'm being cognizant of, go ahead. We already did this one. Go ahead. Go ahead. These slides are, go ahead. Yep, we're gonna jump to, so these slides are linked on our SSA webpage, because I'm being thoughtful about the amount of time we're using. How are we doing? Okay. Alrighty. So our family partners prioritized academic achievement, school climate, student belonging, family engagement, safety, multilingual supports, mental health, and equitable access to student supports. This is from our LCAP survey and our LCAP engagements. So when Christy is here with us tonight as well, when Christy was leading the development of our LCAP this year, as school site councils were being asked what were their thoughts, and these are the things that came out as the highest themes for making sure that we're prioritizing. Alrighty. So families are naming the conditions that makes our schools strong, and our family feedback will and should be part of the design criteria. As we're starting to think about what will be part of that optimal program design, we need to have those things in mind as well. So clear communication, safe and welcoming schools, academic support, belonging in relationships, access to services and facilities, and healthful, well-maintained facilities. So each year, as we're looking for feedback about how our schools are doing, how our students are feeling at school, we do that on a yearly basis through our Youth Truth Survey, but we also do that through engagement with our LCAP, and that happens at school site council meetings, that happens at DLAC meetings, at our district advisory committee meetings, and through lots of engagement around those things. So some things to be thinking about, some of those design conditions. Students need reliable access to academic intervention and acceleration. English learners and former English learners need continuity of multilingual programs or multilingual supports. Students with disabilities need a coherent continuum of services. Families need clear access points and communication. Students need belonging, safety, and consistent adult relationships. Feasible implementation of these conditions, and then we have to take into account transportation and geography of where families live in close proximity or further proximity to school sites. So it's kind of stating all of the different things that have to be taken into account, and so that's part of the work of that optimal design. Alrighty. So that family feedback has to inform our thinking as we start to test ourselves, well, what will be the most important thing that we consider? And it can't be a singular thing. And so this is just to kind of get us thinking about that idea that as we start to have those conversations and we begin the process to consider how will we make this decision, how do we use some of these inputs to, Ray, kind of to your point, really highlight the things that are going well. Let's not lose those. And then if it ends up that we have two sites combining, for example, if a school that is coming to another campus had some specific challenges, that would have to be a part of the planning for how do we welcome in those new families, and knowing, okay, they had concerns about X, Y, and Z. Let's make sure that that is front loaded at the very beginning so that we're not having to later, oh gosh, we should have seen that coming. This really has to be forward thinking. All right. So as we're kind of considering the feedback that we've gotten over the course of the year around the LCAP, some things that might start to have us consider then. Student access to required but also high priority services, program continuity across grade spans, equity for high needs students, attendance and transportation impacts, something that when Mark was talking about that chronic absenteeism, if transportation is part of that factor. We certainly wouldn't want to increase our absenteeism, right? We don't want that to increase. We have to pay very careful attention to that. Family and community connection, staffing feasibility and program quality, facility suitability for program delivery, fiscal sustainability. All of these are factors that have to come into play, including the things that we're required to provide, including some of our special education services and some of the other programs that we're required to provide. Okay. So I think we're gonna transition to special education.
Yeah, just a couple things as we transition, and then I'll finish it off, and I know I need to be mindful of time, so Gerardo, please chime in. The piece that I just want to make sure that you guys understand, and I agree with the point, the most amount of data that we can have and how we can dissect it is always important, but I will tell you guys, we could share a lot of data and come up with a bunch of different hypotheses. This is scary work, and I believe it was our facilitator that I applaud what you said, I'm just using that term jokingly. I think it's gonna get hairy, and the sad thing about it is I don't think we'll ever have the data that we look for to make some of the big decisions. I really, really don't. Because I could tell you, and I'm gonna show you one here in a second when we talk about our students with disabilities, I was going back and forth with Megan. I can argue for a lot of the data slides, I could argue for it, and I could argue against it. And to be honest with you, in some cases, it depends on the kid and their experience or the parent and their experience. So that's just something to keep in mind. I don't think we'll ever get to the data source we need where we feel that comfortable, because if that was the case, guys, we just share it up there and say, do you agree or not agree? It's complicated, dirty work, is I guess the point I'm trying to make. Next slide for me, please. I want to go deeper into one of our most at-promise students, and honestly, it's funny, I just keep seeing people walk in this door knowing the people in here. I've got a lot of special educators in this room, including myself, and that is the love and passion, including former SELPA directors, current executive directors of SELPA, and other special educators, so hat goes off to it. So this is very, very personal to me. Next slide, please. All right, so here, we really, really want to get onto the big picture, but I really, really want to get to this end, which is analysis, and I believe English language learners is coming next. It's really taking a deeper dive into the student population. Because again, if we're going back to that LCAP, and we're going into youth truth, and it didn't dissect it by our parents or SWD's survey results, but I would tell you that the LCAP indicates that we do have a greater need for improvement in areas that typically affect our student groups. Next slide. All right. So I want to talk about that special ed is a complicated beast. I still to this day been in the field teaching years too, 29 years, and I still learn about special education each and every day. Love it. The constant pursuit of knowledge that you could never ever quite acquire. But I just kind of want to give you some foundations. Special education is based on student need. Program continuum is talking about the continuum of programs that we offer both inside Pajaro Valley and outside Pajaro Valley. When you develop your continuum, you look at location and access. And I'm going to show you some complicated looks at location and access as it pertains to our students with disabilities. You look at the stability and scale of what you can do. And I will tell you, across the state and including Pajaro, staffing considerations for special education is a challenge. I don't know of any district where that does not exist, any district. That is a challenge that affects, and something to be keeping in mind as a data point as decisions are made or recommendations are made going forward. So that is some of the things that you have to consider as we look at scenario testing when we get to that point. With that, okay, this is showing the continuum. And I wouldn't say I'm necessarily, and I wish I would have caught it, in complete agreement by this is all that we do, because I would actually argue that in some cases this is a lot. There's certain things that I would point in all these things, but generally speaking in pre-K, TK, you're really working on the early intervention of services. And a number of our students are identified that early, specifically students with low incidence disabilities or students with more old-term, mild, moderate, extensive support needs in terms of their disabilities. In grades 1 and 3 across the board, we really working on the basic early literacy skills, early mathematical skills, occasionally functional skills. In grades 4 and 5, you start making that transition. And I would argue peer access exists everywhere. and inclusion exists everywhere, but you kind of deal with those middle school ages as both a combination of what we're trying to do academic end, but you also start to shift the focus on what the student and the family wants for the student going outside of their post-secondary high school experience. Middle school, and then our high schools. In high school, you do really kind of make a transition for both mild, moderate, and students with extensive support needs, but it really, again, does focus more on life after either a diploma from Pajaro Valley or 22, and really what the child wants to do, and we set up that IEP in relation to that. All right, so this is a snapshot of the programs we offer. Resource, which typically works with students with our mild, I would say mild to moderate disabilities, is basically at every single one of the elementary sites, 6 middle schools, and then the 3 high schools. So that program's there, and when I get to the numbers, you're gonna understand why. But you're gonna see as you look at this, and I don't think this is complete on what I was just some information I was told, but generally speaking, we like to, and you could argue for and against, take our specialized program with lower numbers of students with disabilities and try to condense them and keep them on a particular school site. And I could tell you, I could argue the benefits for, and I could argue the benefits against, and I'll illustrate that point here in a second. You're gonna see, ditto, we have the full complement at our high schools as well. Post-secondary is really referring to our students that we have an obligation to serve if they don't earn a diploma, and we're working with those individuals typically until age 22. A lot of students that we work on the functional skills, what they want to do once they transition out of our system at age 22. All right, by the numbers, and I hate the formatting, it looks like something got mixed up between Google Slides and the other, but just by the numbers, our kids. 2,730, which is about 17% of our population. That number with which is attending school. These numbers are not inconsistent with some state trends, but you're really gonna see on the top, generally speaking, I guess what I would say more of the mild, moderate disabilities, the specific learning disabilities, the student that may be dyslexic, the student that has an auditory processing disorder, a visual processing disorder. It's getting into that. Speech and language, autism, which I would probably say if I were to look at that 10 years ago, that number would have been a lot lower. That number is high. I was actually pleasantly surprised it wasn't as high as I had actually initially thought when I first looked at the data. Other health impairment, which is typically students with a health impairment. You may see a lot of students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that's in there. That's a big chunk of that, but it could be other health impairments. Your intellectual disabilities, students that are deaf and or hard of hearing, and students that have an emotional disability. There's other conditions and eligibility for special ed, but that was just kind of a snapshot of that. Here, it's easy for the most part, other than staffing, to serve because we have more kids to serve. Here, when you get into the more specialized, the more either A, low incidence that doesn't happen as often, or B, students with more intellectual impairments, et cetera, specialized planning and how we organize that requires considerable thought from the cell phone. Next slide. Okay, so this is the slide that actually I want to take a little bit of time on, then I'm going to breeze through this real quick. Here's where you can argue both for and against, because Megan and I were going back and forth. Now, I have an opinion, but I will not share it. So, as we look at the decisions that need to be made in Pajaro, you look at smaller size. An argument for a smaller size school could be more personalized attention. It could also flip and say smaller size doesn't give me the access to the inclusionary practices I need. It can go both ways. Specialized nervous need, this exists everywhere. But when you don't condense your resources and you have to hire multiple to serve, it is difficult to find the providers to serve, which is a problem throughout California, I would argue throughout the nation. You could argue the limited peer cohort. At a smaller school, I don't have as many peers. At a larger school, I have a greater amount of peers potentially because an elementary school with 200, an elementary school with 600, there's going to be more peers and more potential for interaction. It also probably in that case would allow for more inclusionary opportunities, but you might sacrifice the small school feel and the more personalized attention somebody might experience here. Higher continuity risk. Staffing, always. Peer cohort. Isolation, for better or for worse. Transitions, the reason why we try to cluster our programs to the greatest extent possible is because you don't really want to move a child that was in TK3 in a program and then at grades 4 through 6 have to bus them to another elementary school. Why? They lose the elementary experience, they have to start all over again. problems. The drawback, because I can make the counter argument, we regionalize our programs. If the program is on somewhere close to Monterey County, and we have a student that's over at Aptos, we're gonna have to bus that kid an awful long way, and that becomes a factor in consideration. Next slide for me. This is an important slide because it also insinuates pressure points, but it's bigger than that. There are a number of reasons we have to look outside of Pajaro to educate some of our students. These numbers represent the number of students that we cannot educate, the first two, actually the first two, within our district. And usually you contract out either A, when you maybe don't have the proactive approach, and I'll give you an example. A non-public school may serve our students with emotional disabilities. They may serve our students with cognitive impairments and autism. Typically, the deciding factor is the behavior. Did we have to move the student because we didn't have the supports and services and the behavioral supports in place? Maybe. Could it have just been that even with those supports, a student could not be maintained on a public school campus? Possibly. Those placements are some of the most expensive placements that the SELPA has to endure, but they are our kids, regardless. If they live in our geographic boundary, those are our kids. Ditto with the kids that we move over to Santa Cruz County Office of Education. The point that I want to point out is of the 2,700 numbers approximately, we provide door-to-door transportation for 423 students within Pajaro Valley. And that, I would only say for the sake, it's not a gotcha number, it's not, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. It really is, 423 students get on a bus. And it behooves us, and the SELPA usually works to reduce the amount of time a student's on a bus to the greatest extent possible. It isn't always easy, especially when you work in a district with a big geographical boundary, and Pajaro has a pretty big geographical boundary. 43 students want to get to travel patterns. This basically just shows the number of kids. And again, I hate the formatting, my apologies, guys. If you've ever tried to go Google the PowerPoint, the numbers get wonky. I've seen this way too many, or so many times. But either way, it just shows the breakdown of the students that we are that are on our transportation, door-to-door transportation system. So there you see the numbers. I wouldn't see any anomaly, but I would still make a reference of is transportation needs to be something that is considered by this team. It may not be all the data sources, it's just a simple consideration. Yes, decisions that are made could have an impact, for better or for worse, on the students. And the most important factor to remember with a student with a disability, and I've got parents here too, as well as teachers and special education administrators, every single one of those decisions is made through the IEP process, completely individualized. What the kid needs, there is no such thing as a cookie cutter, here you go, this is where we're doing this. It is truly based on the student needs and an IEP team decision. So again, hate to complicate the issue, but it gets complicated, especially with that student population. Next slide. All right, so what this does, and it really, this whole piece is really trying to guide the fact of the, I don't want to say the confusion, the challenge. Because I could argue that we have other student groups that this is going to be equally as important to that aren't named in tonight's presentation. That could include the English learners, that could include our foster youth, that could include our students that are in transitional housing. I would say though, what I applaud about this, and I think the whole purpose, and I think I almost am going to finish where I started. The work in this, by this group is really focused on the right facilities, the limitations there, our enrollment, our fiscal situation, 100%. But we have to keep in mind the programmatic piece of it, guys. Because if you only look at it under that lens, if we look at some of those things, and I don't want to say our kids, but students as, okay, now wait, let's go pick up the pieces. Those pieces can be difficult to pick up. And that doesn't mean we're going to have the crystal ball that's going to say, do this, 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 all this stuff is gone. I would argue, I don't know if that's possible ever. But it is something as this group moves forward with both looking at it from more of a facilities budgetary end. How do we still consider that with the programmatic needs and still continue to show growth for the never-ending pursuit of what we want to do for our kids collectively, working together, community, parents, teachers, classified staff, and administrators. And so with that, if I haven't closed it, that leaves enough time, maybe, Gerardo, for you to finish. I only have 6 minutes, but I think I got to the root of, at least I think the portion that we wanted to share on that end. It's up to you. I don't know if you have a closer. I wanted to be very, very respectful of time. Please. Yep. I hate the formatting, but yes.
Okay, I like this slide. This is a great slide because I'm looking at, personally, as a fifth grade teacher, I'm looking at the preparation for middle grades, peer access, intervention, intensity, and inclusion. That's beautiful. And what we're doing, at least in the elementary school level, is we're doing the preschool TK through third grade work in fourth and fifth grade. We're still we're still trying to identify. We're still trying to create those foundational services and family entry into the system. And it's like, I'd rather do that. And I'm looking at the other ones too. It's in theory, this is great, and I would love to see this more.
Well, thank you for that. I will tell you, it still gets complicated, guys, because I would argue, and I appreciate what you said, we're doing the identification and the early intervention in some cases in this grade level. I would say this captures a certain student population of our SWDs. I could argue it doesn't happen as often. Identification and intense intervention sometimes happens here. And believe it or not, it can happen here too. Now, I don't usually like to see that. I wouldn't say it's common play, but it does.
The later the identification and entry into those additional systems of absolutely needed support for those students, the harder it gets for them and the more behind they become, and the more behind the other students in the class become as well.
It makes the needs on two different parts. Us being very, very good at identification, it also, there is a lot of work that can be done even with a student that has dyslexia. And I'll give you an example, even with some of the stuff that's coming down recently from the state. I can early intervene on a student with dyslexia and prevent their need for special education services and get them darn close to grade level. But we got to have an intervention program that's going to do it for those kids. I think it also comes down to the point of also the tier one and what I'm talking about, and also the specific focus on, let's say, the science of reading. I think it was you that mentioned some of those programs and some of the stuff that you're happy that you guys are doing. That really dissects a lot of the stuff that drives students, whether or not they have the disability or not, or if it's in the areas that are typically associated with dyslexia. But it drives the fact that if we intervene, and if we intervene early, we could actually prevent a large number of our students with mild, moderate disabilities from ever coming into special education. And again, special education can be seen as the need. I've also seen it completely diminish the confidence of the kid. Again, different strokes for different folks. And again, it makes the challenge, and sorry to confuse, sorry to make it to where there is no right or wrong answer. It really is the complexity of not only that, but the decision making that this body has to make. So, please.
Yeah, so maybe coming back to the decision-making piece in terms of the optimal program models and the needs, we've gotten a lot of data, so I apologize if we've already received this, and my suspicion is no, and you might not be quite ready for it yet, but it would be helpful to understand what the program's needs are now, and maybe look out similar to what you've done with attendance numbers of what those program needs look like over the next 3 to 5 years, if you do a rough estimate of that growth that we've seen currently. Because I obviously, we're not going to be designing a special education program, but it will be helpful to know how many of the different types of programs we need and what that looks like.
Okay. Going back to what Raymond said, the data, I think it does matter because we are kind of like looking into what schools we're gonna close. So I feel like we do need to take care of all of our students. If I could recall, like when you were talking at the board meeting, you were all about data. So I think data is important. Like kids that are going to Ohlone, the parents may not be able to read the what's it called, the survey, and kids, parents that go to like other schools, they're very techie. So I think it is very important because that was a very broad percentages for me. And
Thank you for that, and I appreciate what you said. My point is not to diminish the data. My only thing is, I think that this group, when, and I forget the term that the gentleman used, I think we're gonna get to a point where you guys will be scratching your head, because I could show you some other pieces of data. It doesn't mean that data isn't worthwhile and we shouldn't look at it. What it means is that there's gonna be some incredibly hard decisions, because I could pick apart even that data much, I could just look at it and say, well, wait, I wish we had this. Again, I applaud you for it, not suggesting that data isn't important and relevant to look at. I would just say when it comes to the decision-making or the recommendations that I think of the work that comes here, it's complicated, it's complicated. You have 50% families that are satisfied and 50% families that are unsatisfied, let's say with whatever something is happening. There's gonna be people that are upset with the decision that's made or recommendations that come out of here. There's gonna be people that are gonna be happy as happy can be. So, again, sorry, so yeah, please don't, I did not mean to negate that more data isn't helpful. I just think the decision-making is gonna be a challenge. With that,
Thank you, Art, thank you. Okay, I want to say that again, so I know people are watching from outside. So, John led us on this report, and some of the questions that were answered at the beginning were from this report, and there will be a lot answered on this presentation. So, and it also is this presentation is a summary of this binder is like the facility inspection tool approved by the state of California about the review, the inspection of each of the schools. Each classroom in each school is evaluated, including the playgrounds. I want to say the fields are not included in this report, so I want to be that transparent. So there's some questions about the fields, and that is like another area, like soccer fields and football fields are not included. So with that, I also want to share, like, so when I finish this presentation, when we spend like 3 minutes, I'm gonna give you a summary of what I'm presenting here, including they will be included in all of here. So this is a report that I just copy from the approved state facility inspection tool qualifies how our facilities are graded. So can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So this is again a facility inspection tool, and how is the grade of school is they're okay, the good repair, they are the deficiency, or they are street deficiency, or there are items that are not applicable. Go to the next slide. And all of that is in your information. So there's people who they are experts who specialize on these areas. Mr. Herlindo, he's in the back. This is his area of expertise. So but the state tells us what they need to review. And why they do that? Because there have to be some standards throughout the state, right? Like how we are graded. Just go to the next one. I just want to show you. So everything is this is just about what is expected in the schools. So this is a summary of our schools. You know, like to be the best, it has to be above 90. So this is all our schools. And we will go over each one, but I want to say this is a review of the whole school, the whole area, and then you get your report card. That's what it is about the schools. So keep going to the next. So this is the rating, the score, the rating, and so that's kind of like we were talking about the deficiency, the stream deficiency. So right now it's like for these schools, we have the stream deficiency, the rest, and that's what maintenance department is focused on. I think Ashley at the one I think it was like the second meeting, you would ask about like our work orders. You know, like where are we with our work orders? I will argue like this is even as important or as even more important because this is the things that we need to focus to have safety for our students. So keep going to that. What happened here? Is that my eyes or seriously? So this is these are numbers. What is I don't know how that looks a little bit different. This is the areas that they were like review in each area throughout the district. I'll go to the next slide. So now we go into each of the it's a little different. Each of the schools for like for instance for Alianza, every room was inspected. Go to the next one. Yeah, so this is, I'm gonna go really, I'm gonna give you a summary of all of this at the end, right? But I'm just gonna go to every school. So you will see like a school rating based on the percentage, and that is like a exemplary school. They had to be like really high, like 99 to 100%, where it's almost everything has to be perfect, and then like good is exemplary. Yeah, so like good is 90 to 98.9. You know, that's according to the state, and so that's the and poor is like we are between 75, 89.9. So this is our ratings, but so like Alianza, you know, this is grading that percentage. That's just an example is considered poor. Go to the next slide. Yeah. And then we go through every then a next. I gonna go kind of fast on this ones. Calabasas, and I will show you all of this in the summary. Within this summary right here is like about 40 pages or inspections that summarize this report. What happened? Okay, so that's the end. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, and I'm gonna share this report from both sides, and I'm gonna give you like 5 minutes because I think we still have some time. This is important data, so you could review that. Besides this is in this inspection, we also include some information that we shared previously about like the part of the what is needed at each school site under the facilities master plan. We include that in this report as well, so you can have some presentations from before and from this report to share you, so you can review data from here. And I want to give you 5 minutes because I know there's a lot of numbers and you know what are the status of our schools. And I think in comparing 2 or 3, like we do that is all. Yeah, that's an updated. So I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. So you said it? Okay, then we go from the. Yeah, yeah. It's just more into it, like you coming back again, different. Yeah. Hello? I guess it's 5 minutes. That is 5 minutes. So let's go 1, 2, 3, or even more. You want to have any comments about the data or as presented? Let's go to the left, to my left side. I want to go. No? This some data that you have reviewed, you have seen before in a different format, and can we kind of put it together? So nothing in the middle.
I mean, the only other question,
Yes,
still the
sir.
same question remains from last time, which is with the removals of the, portables, are the capacities changed at this point in time, or are those still reflective of, pre-removal of portables?
Okay. Great question. I think it's several of you had same question, so we will review that. Yes.
Yeah, I think, sorry, we were just talking about this versus the facility data and numbers that you gave us early, in like meeting 2 or 3. And those numbers obviously added up very, here, the total cost, we're talking, what, $1 billion? And that added up to multiple billions of dollars, wasn't it? And so I'm just, if you can just explain a little bit the difference in what we're seeing here versus what was shown in that the earlier projected numbers and assessment.
It is the same. It's right here. It's just breaking down by the priority. It's coming from the same place. Priority cost 1, 2, and facility master plan. Are you talking about when we put it as a total?
Yeah, so early on, we went through, right, where you had gone through and assessed the cost of all the different projects that needed to happen, and each school you had, here's what it's gonna cost to get us to fixing all these things, and you had that, and those numbers added up a lot higher, if I recall correctly, than what I'm seeing here.
It is
This
the same.
They're the same numbers?
Yeah, the same numbers. Yeah, they just, I think right here, we probably didn't do like a total, it's the same numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from here? No? Yeah.
So I have a question because it's not really clear. So capacity availability versus like usable availability. And the reason why I say that is because there are available classrooms, right? According to the report or what have you, in facilities master plan. But those classrooms might be being used for a community like engagement
No.
area, or right, or were those, or maybe it's a health office, or maybe it's a pantry, like were those implemented into these usable space capacities? Because that would be something that I'd be curious to know. I know especially like expanded learning uses classrooms, and
That's like after school.
yeah, and like but like psychologists, like there are different uses for different classroom spaces. So is that capacity just for like classroom use, or is it also support
Yeah.
services?
Yeah, capacity when there is defined is like a classroom. It was the school constructed as a for classroom. So the state will, as he said, used as a classroom. So that's how is the capacity is defined. So what happens in the schools, the studies that is, if there is a space in the schools, somebody will use the classroom for one purpose or another, and that's where it became like instead of having a small another area, you have a classroom for an office. That's that's the worst thing you can do when you use a classroom that for something that was not designed, that is not for that purpose. So that includes that. So is it used as a classroom or it's not?
So I agree with what you're saying, but are like the services that we provide with PVUSD, it has evolved, right, over just the last 5 years. So
Yeah.
in alignment with the grant funding that we received, right? So there's has to be a community space, right? There has to be a community engagement space. There has to be, let's call, a fab lab or whatever we're calling
Yeah.
it. So that, yeah.
No, we have defined that, and we actually have designed a space available for I think what you're talking about a lot, Ashley, is the expanded learning opportunity programs, which is very big in our district. So that's like they have designed the spaces for that.
No, I'm not just speaking to expanded learning. That's just one piece of the puzzle. I'm speaking to special education. I'm speaking to community engagement, right? I'm speaking to book rooms, fab labs, spaces that are otherwise utilized other than just the classroom, but would have otherwise been used as a classroom. But now because there is actually space and then people, 6 people aren't crammed into one office, then now they're being utilized to meet the needs that our school district is now like offering, like the services we're offering. So I just wonder if those were like, or they should be in this report, like just in that capacity, if that makes any sense.
Okay, let me say like the way I think I understand your comment. Your question is, are there any rooms that are used for other than classrooms included in here? So we had that data. So let me work with facilities to include that in here. Yes.
I want to just piggyback on what she was saying. That's exactly what we were talking about over here for a little bit, was if we're going to have the optimal school,
You need to have it.
right, the vision, and that includes release to other classrooms. For elementary school, for instance, we already have some of these classrooms, but then the capacity says that all of those classrooms should be filled with kids all the time. And then if that's not the optimal capacity for the school, what we determine for the vision of what that looks like, can we actually even have a new capacity, depending on what that,
Okay,
does that make sense?
I think so.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So this we have one more report. So let's go to the next one report, and that's this is short, and then we go back to the agenda again. So this is just a summary. There's more detail about what we have been talked about in previous meetings is portables versus permanent classrooms. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Okay, go to the next slide. So just a little summary. We have over 363 across the district portable classrooms. Really, a lot of that happened when the state put the class size reductions 20 to 1 for K3, and then they changed it to 24 to 1 in the school district. At that point in time, our district have a different good problem that we were growing. We were enrollment, so that's why we had to do that. So can you go to the next slide? So we have out of that the for school size. We have continued to eliminate 24 classrooms already that we have done that we're planned for this summer. We do that. So as of this point on time, we have for closing 24 lease portables, we have saved $500,000 just on leases on that. We have reduced utilities $100,000. This is an estimate about maintenance and about $150,000 just on not having these portable classrooms.
Real quick question. So you had 363 up there in terms of portables in your document here. 347 is in your document, so it's an 8% swing.
Go to the previous slide.
363,
Yeah.
and then in your document here is 347. That's an 8% swing. So what happened to those 8%? Not including the potential 24 that's in there.
You're talking, what are you?
So in your document here about your enrollment metrics, on the far right, it says district portables, and it adds it up. 347.
And this document right here? Okay, I got you, the district level. Okay. Um, So, I know, that's when we started, and this is kind of like where we are right now when this report was done. So, but I will follow up, I understand your question. Mhm.
Are these projected gross savings, or net savings after accounting for implementation costs such as like moving classrooms,
Can you go to the
transportation
next,
changes,
the next slide, sorry.
technology,
This is what-
relocation, receiving site modifications, staffing time that we pay for, overtime, all that fun stuff?
This is the estimated savings that it costs for us to remove from the bullet points.
So it does not, I'm hearing that it does not include the accounting for the implementing cost factor. So that number could actually be smaller, right?
I like for
The one-time cost.
It's included in the other one-time cost, or the one-time,
She's asking if the one-time costs of removing are included in your
yeah,
estimates of
yeah,
your
that,
saving.
they are included, yeah, because it costs us time to remove that.
No, I'm asking like, the projection of it. So like does that include like the implementation cost? So does it include, moving of that classroom? Does it include the transportation changes and challenges that are going to arise because of those removals?
Also, just like, I
The
didn't-
technology relocation, like all the wire pulling, all that, these are all like, can dip into like overtime and stuff like that. So those district cost savings, right? But were those other costs like included in that? Because that's like real time happening right now. Because these sites receiving modifications, are also needing to have staff time, and in some cases, from what I'm understanding and learning as we go, are actually incurring overtime costs as well. Thank you.
Yeah, but when we remove a portable, it is a cost associated, and that's a one-time cost versus ongoing savings from leasing the facilities. Okay, keep going to the next. So the state of portables, most of our portables they pass the spending life of 25 years into life cycle. So, let me see, 28. It's just some graphic designs about like once the portable passes the life expectancy, it's really expensive to maintain, keep going that versus a permanent classroom. So I don't wanna like blame the people who we got the portables. We need classrooms that we needed at one point in time. It took a very long time. Like, what do? We did not really have a plan when an enrollment changes, and we do not need those classrooms anymore. So I know it's 7:29 right now, but it keep on to the next. So it's 7:29. I also want to let you know that I think most of you know today is my last meeting with a group, but we have a transition team we're working on that. So this committee will continue. I want to give thanks to each of you for continuing that. I encourage you to continue this difficult and hard work, but needed work for the well-being of our students, our community. And next week will be my last. So this will be my last meeting. But we have still a lot of work to do, and there's a transition plan on the work as I